Hi, everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome. If you don't know, I'm Melissa Grant. I'm the president of the Grassroots Democrats HQ. If you wouldn't mind putting in the chat where you're from so we can see how all of you are from all over the country and the organizations you're with that hopefully is an affiliate of ours. We'd love that. Tonight, we have a very special guest who's going to tell us all about the Wisconsin Supreme Court race and why that is essential to every Democrat across the country. But before we get there, I want to give credit as credit is due to all the people that make the Grassroots Democrats HQ work. And they begin with Brian Coker, who's our CFO. And then we have Tamara Melzer-Levinson, who's our unbelievable executive director. And we have our event strategist and coordinator in the fourth hand of Tamara, Ingrid Van Eckart. And we've got senior strategists, Davis Hahn and Monishu Tari. And then we've got our finance associate and Latino consultancy. That is, where are you, Robert? I don't see you. You raise your hand, Robert Jimenez. And we've got our senior editor and affiliate outreach. I don't know if I saw Barry, but Barry Rosenbaum is essential. We also have our recruitment coordinator, Andy Linden. Don't know if I've seen him. Our national youth advisor, who's incredible and happens to be related to our executive director. That's Eve Levinson. Then we have our youth vote associate, Ali D'Agostino, our technology coordinator, Pratt Malik, field organizer, Sydney Stern, assistant to the fellowship program, Sophia Boren, our postcard associate, Eliana Ryder, and then our hospitality coordinators who will be becoming even more important when we move down the road and have another brick and mortar, and that's Deborah Shishko and Kelly Dockery. Would you all please give a hand to the staff and people that make the Grassroots Democrats possible? Yay. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce Tamara, who has a special announcement for you. Tamara Melzer-Levinson, take it away.
Hello, everyone. So tonight you are all here for our monthly happy hour. And as you know, a monthly happy hour on Zoom, this is not an event that we charge for. But what we are doing this evening and throughout the program, as you're hearing what is being talked about, when you're hearing about the needs of what Wisconsin does, when you hear about how that impacts the rest of the country, and you see as well how much the Grassroots Democrats HQ is doing, I want to let you know that we have a goal of raising $4,000 tonight, representing that we want to have a 4 to 3 seat majority in the Supreme Court in Wisconsin. My personal goal, it's a huge reach, everyone, but it is that Wisconsin Democratic Party is going to come out with $4,000, and the Grassroots Democrats HQ will as well. We are going to keep moving forward in the agenda now, moving on with our program, but you can look in the chat continually, and please, if you are so moved, make a donation tonight and share it out with others as well. I'm now going to turn this over to Davis Hahn, our Grassroots Democrats HQ senior strategist.
Thanks so much, Tamara. And actually, before we leave that screen, I do want to share a little bit of exciting news that we got right before we came onto this call, Tamara, if you don't mind.
Please go ahead.
That's that we have an anonymous donor who has very generously offered to match the first $1,000 in donations that we received during tonight's event. And as you can see on your screen, that money is going to be split 50-50 between the Wisconsin Democratic Party and the Grassroots Democrats HQ as we work together over the next several weeks to make sure that we win this critical election. I wanted to start off by just giving us a little bit of background on our previous work in Wisconsin that has kind of set the stage for our work in this race. As some of you may remember, I was our field director back in 2020. And of course, we did a ton of work in Wisconsin that year in order to get Joe Biden elected president. Donald Trump had narrowly won Wisconsin back in 2016. That was one of those upsets that ultimately sent him to the White House. We flipped the state back in 2020, but Joe Biden won it by just a very slim margin, 20,000 votes total. You can see on your screen that was worth about 0.6%. At the Grassroots Democrats HQ, in partnership with the coordinated campaign in Wisconsin of the Democratic Party, we contacted more than 250,000 voters. And those are the exact ones that we had statistics for. We did even more. We were doing a texting program in partnership with Women's March Action that we don't have hard numbers from, where we were texting women across the state, particularly BIPOC women, encouraging them to register to vote, and then also reaching out to the folks who have been targeted by voter suppression laws to make sure that they were aware of the most updated information on how they could cast their vote. And so while I'm not saying our organization was solely responsible for Joe Biden winning in 2020, there were many great organizations, including the Wisconsin Democratic Party, who are on the ground doing this work day in and day out. I do like to think that we played a significant role in helping to win that state, given the sheer number of folks that we contacted and mobilized, and how slim of a margin it ended up being in the end. And it really goes to show you how much these field programs can make a difference. So now to talk a little bit about our work in Wisconsin in 2022, I'm going to toss it over to our field director from this past election cycle, Mana Shushtari.
Thanks, Davis. Hey, everybody. So good to see everyone again. Just to recap what we did in 2022, just in phone calls alone, we contacted nearly 100,000 voters in Wisconsin, in which we did in partnership directly with the Wisconsin Democratic Party, helping to re-elect Governor Tony Evers, and we almost flipped Ron Johnson's seat back to blue. So we made 99,000, we did make over 100,000 calls, pardon me. We made 99,674 phone calls, and we also did 10,574 phone calls to young voters ages 18 to 29 years old to make sure that they had a plan to go and vote. We also did volunteer recruitment calls to make sure that we got young voters on the ground in Wisconsin involved and on the ground knocking doors and making phone calls to their peers in Wisconsin. Like we did in 2020, we also did a lot of texting into Wisconsin in partnership this time with Voters of Tomorrow, where we were texting young voters. Unfortunately, we don't have the hard numbers from that, but we texted beyond thousands of young voters in Wisconsin to make sure that we could defend Tony Evers and also almost flip Ron Johnson's seat back to blue. And now I'm going to kick it over to Robert Jimenez, who's going to talk about what we are doing in 2023.
Hi, everybody. I'm Robert Jimenez. And so now in 2023, we so far have made over 30,000 phone calls. And these phone calls are from our weekly phone banks and also the youth calls that we've been doing. So like Mana was talking about, we reached a lot of voters last year and we're continuing that effort this year. And we also have already sent over 30,000 postcards so far, and the requests keep coming in, so this number keeps going up. And so combined, the two liberal, pro-choice, and pro-voting rights candidates won over 54% of the vote. So it's important that we continue this momentum as the election comes up. And next, I'm gonna introduce you guys to Susan Shu, who's an elected member of the LACDP, a board member of the Women's Reproductive Rights Assistance Project, and she's also a Wisconsin native. So here's Susan.
Hi, everyone. My name is Susan Shu, and I'm a third-generation Wisconsinite. I spent my early years actually on a farm in Chippewa Falls, Wisconsin, and then later lived in nearby Eau Claire, where my mom and my in-laws still live. Though I've lived in LA for 30 years or more, I still hold Wisconsin near and dear to my heart. This upcoming Supreme Court election is the difference between reproductive justice and forced birth and democracy versus fascism. I'm proud that Wisconsin has one of the strongest and best organized state Democratic parties. As Senator Tammy Baldwin recently said, the Wisconsin Democratic Party has become a vibrant and year-round organization that's always focused on winning the next election and registering and educating voters for so that we have a more educated electorate. It's one of the strongest and best organized state parties around. And it makes me, the work of our special guest, Ben Wikler, makes me really believe that Forward is really deserving of the state motto of Wisconsin, which I believe we can do with this election. It's my pleasure to introduce one of my fellow Wisconsinite and the brilliant chair of the WisDems, Ben Wikler, who will share more about how we can make justice and Judge Janet win on April 4th. Thanks very much.
Thank you so much, Susan, for that much too generous introduction. It is so good to see you here. Thank you, Robert, Mana, Davis, Tamara, Melissa, and Ingrid, and Brian, and the whole GDHQ team. I'm so excited about this moment. I'm so thankful that 128 people are on this Zoom right now, because this moment with this race is the hinge for the future of democracy in Wisconsin, and Wisconsin is the hinge for the future of democracy in the United States. And it's not really an exaggeration to say that. If you look at the 2020 election or the 2016 election, and you line up all the states, starting with the states where the winning candidate had the biggest margin of victory, and moving along and adding up the Electoral College votes as you go, Donald Trump got to 270 votes in the Electoral College and got the White House when he won Wisconsin. And in 2020, it's
Ben,
Have I been muted? Did I
yes,
just get
you were.
muted? I'm now unmuted. Okay, here we go. I'm going to stay unmuted.
So you can.
Wisconsin is the tipping point state. It's the state that tipped the White House for Trump, the state that tipped the White House for Biden. And if you look at the Republicans now, if you look at where they put the first Republican presidential primary debate, where they put the Republican National Convention, it's Wisconsin, because Wisconsin is their gateway to the White House. And the key to their strategy is to hold their stranglehold on our state Supreme Court. In Wisconsin, the smallest changes can tip the Electoral College votes, the entire statewide election infrastructure one way or the other. We're the only state where 4 of the last 6 presidential races came down to less than 1 percentage point. No other state even has 3. We were the closest state in the country to defeating an incumbent Republican senator in 2022. And I wish to God we had won that race. But in 2024, Republicans want to suppress their way to victory. And if they can't do that, they want to steal the election. And they have their guy to do that. Dan Kelly, the Republican candidate in the state Supreme Court race, if he wins, he will not only cement the Republican control of the state Supreme Court, but he will also do everything he can to move Wisconsin to the red column. And we know this because after we beat him in 2020, he decided to take a job as the election integrity advisor to the Republican Party here and advised the GOP on the fake elector strategy. And then he went on a big lie tour of the state with election deniers and helped them as they litigated and got drop boxes banned completely in the state of Wisconsin for absentee ballots. They made it illegal to return even a relative's absentee ballot in the state of Wisconsin. Republican leaders credited this court litigation with the victory in the Senate race, and they want to go even further before 2024. So if you want to win the next presidential race, you want to make sure Dan Kelly loses now and that Janet Protasiewicz, who believes in democracy, wins in the state Supreme Court. But it's not just the presidency, because these voting rights will also affect the Senate. Tammy Baldwin's up for re-election in 2024. They'll affect whether we can redo our ultra gerrymandered maps. Political scientists say the most extreme partisan gerrymander, all favoring Republicans in the country, is in Wisconsin. If Janet Protasiewicz wins, then we'll have a Supreme Court that takes seriously the constitutional arguments about whether these gerrymandered maps should be allowed. And if they're ruled that they're unconstitutional, we will have a redistricting cycle that could yield 2 U.S. House seats and turn Wisconsin into a democracy instead of whatever it is now, where right now under these maps, if Republicans lose by 11 points statewide, they still get the majority of the seats in the state legislature. There's basically no path to ever winning the legislature unless we get fair maps. And this is the one way we can do it. Just to underscore that, in 2021, after the census, we had a Republican legislature that tried to gerrymander, as they did all over the country. We had a Democratic governor who vetoed the Republicans' maps, but then the state Supreme Court just reached over and chose the Republicans' maps, even though the governor had vetoed them. It's a way of short-circuiting democracy. And the only path out of this is to flip the majority in our state Supreme Court. And the only moment we will have to do that is right now in the election happening in 26 days. So the stakes for democracy are enormous. The stakes for personal freedom in our state are even more bleak. We have a ban on abortion passed before women had the right to vote, before the Civil War in 1849, before modern medicine was invented. No one knows whether it is in effect, but because no one knows whether it's in effect, it's in effect. Every provider of abortion care in Wisconsin has stopped providing abortion care because they don't know whether that could lead to physicians and nurses being jailed for 6 years for a felony. There's no cutoff at any number of weeks. It starts at 0 weeks, this abortion ban. That abortion ban will come before the state Supreme Court, probably by the end of this year. And if Dan Kelly wins, he's been backed by the most extreme anti-abortion groups in the country, he will uphold that ban. And if Janet Protasiewicz wins, she will give a serious hearing to a very powerful legal argument being brought by our governor and attorney general that the laws passed since 1849 should supersede the ban from 1849, and this accursed law will not apply. So this is very personal for people in Wisconsin. And what that means is that we have a more powerful message than the other side. When voters find out that by voting for Janet in the state Supreme Court race, they can undo the abortion ban, or have a very high likelihood of undoing the abortion ban, undoing gerrymandered maps, undoing the threats to democracy, they're motivated to vote. There's a reason why Janet won more votes in the primary than two conservatives running against each other combined. There's a reason why we're seeing explosive growth when we knock on doors. People just jump out of their skin to pledge and commit to casting a ballot. And there's a reason why the right is flooding the state with dark money, hideous, frankly, racist, crime, fear-mongering ads right now. They always show the faces of Black men who are convicted of crimes and say that Janet was not tough enough on them. That is the strategy that they're using. It's the same one they used in the Senate race last year. They're trying to get a 92% white electorate to become racially polarized so that they win this seat. Even though the state Supreme Court's not involved in adjudicating criminal cases, it is all just fear. That is their one message. But the message of freedom and democracy is more powerful. We're better organized than they are. We had our ads on TV in the first week. We have a vastly stronger organizing program. We're knocking on doors in every corner of the state. We're making every dollar stretch further than the other side is. They have more money, but we have a smarter, more effective, more powerful, more morally compelling campaign. And with your help, with a little bit of extra support, with extra resources, and with your time as a volunteer, we can win this thing. And if we win it, we stop teetering on the brink of a total collapse of democracy in our state and actually start to build a democracy in the Badger State, the state where I grew up, where I'm joining you from right now, a state that used to be the birthplace of the progressive movement, that prided itself on being the state that first ratified the 19th Amendment so women had the right to vote, the first state to have protections against discrimination for LGBTQ people, the first state that declared the Fugitive Slave Act unconstitutional in a unanimous decision in a very different Wisconsin State Supreme Court. That is the true heart of Wisconsin, the heart that we can bring to the fore if and only if we win this race. So for all those reasons, I want to thank everyone here so much for being part of this. I'm so excited about the conversation we're about to have. And I want to ask, before we go to the Q&A, if you can just imagine in the fall of 2024, if we lose now and the state Supreme Court starts discarding huge swaths of votes and tilting an election where Biden would be winning instead towards Trump, and on election night intervenes and declares that they have to stop counting the absentee ballots because of some trumped up reason, and suddenly we're thrown into a constitutional crisis, how much at that moment will you wish you could go back to yourself right now and say, this is the time to sign up for some phone banking shifts and to dig deep and donate? Listen to your future self and do everything you can right now, because we've got 26 days. And if we win, it's for all the marbles. We can change the history of Wisconsin, and Wisconsin changes the history of this country. So I ask for your partnership, and I'm so deeply grateful for generosity. And with that, I'm so excited to answer some questions. Thanks, everybody.
Well, wow. Thank you so much, Ben. So who's got questions? Put them in the chat. While people are doing that, I will take my privilege as moderator to ask the first one. And my question is this, which is, so let's say that the gerrymandered maps are thrown out and Wisconsin gets fairer maps. To what extent do you think that will increase Democratic voter participation, given that they're actually now have a chance to vote for their state assembly members, as opposed to having them chosen for them?
So it's a really interesting thing, because in blue areas and in red areas, there's no reason to vote for your state legislature. And because there are so many more Republican gerrymandered districts where Democrats don't have a shot, it's hard to get people to run. And if they do run, it's hard to get people to run a serious campaign. It's hard to get people to donate for those campaigns. When there is a well-funded campaign for state legislature, it gets more people to vote. You have candidates and volunteers who are knocking on doors and asking people to commit to casting a ballot. So if we have fair maps, it will drive up turnout, and rightly so. Now, it'll also probably drive up turnout on the other side, because for Republicans, they can take for granted that they're going to win. But you know what? I'd rather have a high turnout state. It's a healthier democracy if people know that if they cast a ballot, it can have an effect on the outcome. And that's true not just for the state assembly and the state senate, but also for Congress. We do not have real swing congressional seats. We have kind of one. There's one out of the 8 seats that's competitive. We should be a state that has multiple competitive seats, just like all of our statewide are incredibly competitive. So it absolutely will build a healthier democracy. It'll also mean that Republican candidates have to actually think about the general electorate and not just about Republican primary challenges. So I think it's also a path to de-radicalizing the right. Right now, if you're a Republican, the only possible threat to you is an extremist who takes over in a primary campaign. And because of that, Republicans are just looking over their right shoulder and aren't willing to do anything in the public interest that they could get yelled at on right-wing talk radio. But if we have competitive elections, that could change. That is, I think, our best hope to making a Republican Party that is less wildly extreme than the one we have today. So it's not just that more people would participate, but they participate in something that is actually more meaningful and responsible and civic-minded than the kind of extreme polarization we see, especially on the right in this moment.
That's great, Ben. Thanks so much. We have a question from Barbara Carley, which is, can you give us an update about how many voters have been that the campaign has been able to talk to so far? How's the outreach going to Democratic voters, or actually, I guess it would be to all voters for this election? Yeah,
it's going extremely well. So there's both the door knocking between the grassroots and independent groups and the party and the campaign. There's been hundreds of thousands of knocks in the winter in Wisconsin. Just to be clear, there's still snow on the ground in our state right now. There's also been an enormous communications effort. So I think there's 1.5 million postcards that I've heard about that people have sent in. There are tons of pieces of mail. There's advertisements in newspapers and the radio all the time, in every screen you can imagine, from TVs to phones to just about everything. And as a result, in our polling, we're finding, so I should be clear, this is a nonpartisan election. There's no D or R next to the candidates' names, but the overwhelming share, like in the 90s, Democrats know that Janet is the person who lines up with their values. It's also true that Republicans know in nearly the same numbers that Dan Kelly is the guy who they want. But this is not one of these elections where people aren't sure who they should vote for if they do vote. It's now a turnout question, which is how many of the people who agree with us can we make sure actually cast ballots? And that is the work that your support powers. And if you volunteer as well as donate, you can help in both ways to make sure that people who want freedom and democracy in our state actually cast a ballot before or on April 4th.
Thanks. So Kristen Connor is wondering, if the Supreme Court adopts the independent legislature theory, and by the way, the news came out today that they may duck the case, but let's say they take it up. What is your view in terms of how that could impact the outcome in the Wisconsin race?
The independent state legislature doctrine, for those unfamiliar, is the idea that only state legislatures, not courts or governors or any other process, should govern how electoral college votes are decided and what the rules are for elections. If that happens, this race becomes vastly more important, because the independent state legislature doctrine would apply to congressional redistricting and these other questions, but we would still have, we'd be in the middle of a process that could yield the maps that determine the state legislature that would then decide the election rules going forward. So, I mean, it depends a little bit on the exact timing of both what happens in Wisconsin, what happens federally, and how they would decide it. But there's a good chance that if the keys are handed to the state legislature, this race is the only way that we could actually change the composition of the Wisconsin state legislature, which would then affect every future election. So from our perspective, that the possibility that that could happen is puts fire under our feet to make sure we win this thing and get fair maps before the state legislature would have total control.
Great. Roman Boyer is wondering, so in terms of, because this is a nonpartisan election, how does that determine who the Democratic Party is reaching out to? Are you actually reaching out to all voters, including some Republicans? How does that affect your targeting in terms of voters?
So, I mean, people across the political spectrum see the ads and the paid communication. There's a lot of work to get the right messages to the right people from the right messengers. And so the democracy argument, a lot of Republicans in Wisconsin think democracy is in crisis because they think that Joe Biden stole the election. And the only way to save it is to make sure that Trump gets back in power so we can purge the deep state. The democracy arguments are things that we mainly reach out to folks where we know that will be compelling. The argument about abortion and reproductive freedom actually cuts across party lines because Dan Kelly is so extreme and the abortion ban is so extreme that a meaningful chunk of Republicans and most independents and almost all Democrats agree with our message on that issue and don't want to have this abortion ban in force. When we're knocking on doors, there are so many doors to knock on, and we have limited number of volunteer hours. So we try to focus on the people who will vote for Janet if we talk to them and might not vote. And if we reach all those people, then we expand the universe from there. But these elections generally have less than half the turnout of November elections, which means hundreds of thousands of strong Democrats won't cast a ballot. And we can change that, and they will definitely vote for Janet if they do vote. So that's where our field resources go. But in terms of communication, we're engaging just about everyone.
Great. Okay, so we've got a question here from Suba. It's actually a three-parter. So what are the three top things that Judge Janet could do from Wisconsin after she wins? I guess that would be like, what are the three court cases that you think will be filed immediately for her to vote on? I think you mentioned a couple. So yeah, well, let's start with that one.
So the first thing is the abortion ban, which is already moving its way through the courts and will reach the state Supreme Court. And she'd cast that deciding vote. The second one is the gerrymandering question, which I think it's likely someone will bring a legal challenge if the composition of the court changes. And that would be a total game-changing ruling. The third thing, I think maybe most consequential for the country, is the things that she wouldn't do. She wouldn't keep finding ways to strip away voting rights. Wisconsin is now the 47th least easy, or in the ease of voting index, we're number 47. We're one of the hardest states to vote in the country. And that keeps getting worse because the state Supreme Court keeps stomping on ways to vote that are used by Democrats disproportionately. That would end. And having that end would dramatically change the picture for just about every election going forward here.
Would the Democratic Party have to file suit to then go to her to say, we want to throw out these restrictions? Or is this something like, how would she be able to?
Yeah, so someone else would file suit. Because we are providing tremendous support to her campaign, Janet has announced that she would recuse herself if the Democratic Party is a litigant. There are lots of people who can bring litigation. Dan Kelly, interestingly, who worked for the Republican Party, was asked the same question, and he said that it would be a case-by-case decision about whether he'd recuse himself, which says something about his approach to judicial ethics.
Is there does your polling show that a particular demographic of voters need to be reached out to more aggressively than others?
The number one thing, frankly, is women. The gender gap in this election is probably that if we win, it'll be pretty clear that that was a key reason why. And what we're finding is that women across generations, across geography, rural areas and suburbs and cities alike, are especially infuriated. Not to say that men aren't also mad about the attacks on reproductive freedom and on democracy, these other things, but I think we're likely to see a meaningful gender gap, and any medium of communication or organizing that reaches women is one that we should be investing in and are.
Great. So we got one final question here from Val Hinshaw, which is, since the Wisconsin Supreme Court already ruled on the gerrymandered maps, on what basis do you think the lawsuit will be filed to redecide it? Like, do you have a sense of how that would work?
Yeah, so right now the Supreme Court actually just chose the maps. When the governor vetoed the legislature's maps, the state Supreme Court said that they would take submissions for proposed maps, and then they just chose the Republicans' maps. The argument would be that someone could file a lawsuit and say these maps are unconstitutional, that they don't actually give equal representation for Wisconsinites, and there's several parts of our state constitution that certainly to my reading and other people's readings, they violate. A very similar thing happened in Pennsylvania. After a long period of Republican control of their state Supreme Court, they got a progressive majority on the state Supreme Court. A group of folks filed a constitutional challenge to the gerrymandered maps in Pennsylvania. The court struck down the maps, and to dramatically change the composition. They just flipped a legislative chamber in Pennsylvania, and they shifted the composition of the House delegation. And the same thing could absolutely happen in Wisconsin.
That's great. Well, thanks again so much. I really appreciate your thoughtful answers to all these questions. And by the way, thank you everyone in the audience for asking such great questions. So I'm going to now turn this over to Tamara Melzer-Levinson to talk about current volunteer opportunities for this very race. So go ahead, Tamara.
Thank you, Ben.
Thank you.
First of all,
so much.
Ben, actually, Mana, are we at that point, or are we going to talk about the youth programming first?
We can talk about youth
Actually, we're
programming.
going to talk about volunteer opportunities. Sorry.
Actually, real quick, Tamara, before our special guest might have to jump off, can we take some big group photos to show how many people were here?
That was what I was going to get to, is can we all take a moment? This is what I first want to do. I want to thank Ben Wikler for being here. I want to make sure that all of us understand who are volunteering here. First, I want to toast all of you, because you're literally doing the work of making the phone calls, writing the postcards, making sure that everything that Ben talked about in terms of people going out there and knocking doors, we're making time and space for them to do that. But this is our opportunity to take a photo with you. If we were in person at some event, we would all be running up to Ben Wikler right now saying, can we take a selfie with you? So if everybody could please open up your cameras, smile looking forward. This is your opportunity to take a selfie, and we will share it out. So it will take 3 screens to do that. And so I'm going to go ahead and do that right now. Hold on one second. Screen number 1, we're smiling. Okay. Screen number 2, we are still smiling. And because we have 120 people in the room, screen number 3, there we go. Ben, we want to thank you for being here. We want to thank you for motivating us and letting us understand when we're on the phones what it is that is at stake and how we're supporting what you are doing in Wisconsin. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Fantastic. So we're going to put up the volunteer opportunities. First of all, while I'm talking, please, we're going to keep putting that donation link in there. Mana, I was on 2 different screens, which is why I got a little bit lost. Have we made it to the point where we are at our $1,000 match? I believe that we made it to the $1,000 match to begin with. And I want to thank everybody for doing that. If not, when I looked a second ago, we were just below it.
We are there.
Fantastic. So do not want you to keep, I do not want you to be stopping yet, but I do want to thank all of you who have made a donation to enable the matching donor who is in the Zoom room as well. I'm going to toast that person and say, thank you for getting us to our first $1,000. Thank you very, very much. That means we are currently at $2,000 in total tonight. What are we doing at the Grassroots Democrats HQ? Yes, tonight we are asking you for some additional dollars, because we're going to tell you why. It's going to be able to pay for everything that Ben talked about and all these volunteer opportunities. But your volunteer time is what we need. We are going to put into the chat what we call the link tree. The link tree allows you to be signing up for phone banks and for postcarding. What I want you to notice on the screen here, you see 2 different phone banks that the Grassroots Democrats HQ are currently running. Every Wednesday and Saturday, we have a phone bank Wednesdays at 3:30 Pacific time, 6:30 Eastern time, and Saturdays at 10 a.m. Pacific time, 1 p.m. Eastern time. And you see how the state of Wisconsin is filled. That isn't with the people of Wisconsin. That is filled with the logos of all the groups that have been working with us so far. If your group is not listed there, but you are feeding people into our phone banks, or you are running phone banks on your own using our information libraries and our link trees, make sure to call that out to one of our staff members tonight, because we have to get you added. I want to name the names and thank all the groups, because the Grassroots Democrats HQ doesn't do our work alone. We are a hub that connects grassroots groups, Democratic clubs, even central committees to the opportunities in the elections that they want to be working on. So I want to give a huge shout out, and first of all, of course, to the Wisconsin Democratic Party, where all of our phone bank links are coming from. So the data is going right back to them. The California Democratic Party's Environmental Caucus and the Women's Caucus, CBFD Indivisible, Chopwood Carry Water, Culver City Democratic Club, Hodge, Indivisible Antelope Valley, Jewish Democratic Council of America, Miracle Mile Democratic Club, Palos Verdes Democratic Club, Pacific Palisades Democratic Club, Sonoma County Democratic Party, Stonewall Democratic Club, Swing Left West Valley, Westchester Playa Democratic Club, San Fernando Valley Indivisible, and Women's March Action as well. I do know that there are other groups here tonight, people that are representing them. And if you're like, wait a minute, we wanted to do this, or we thought that we did it, put that into the chat. Robert Jimenez is going to be collecting that information, and tomorrow when he is back in the office with me, we will get you added, and we will make sure that you get the information to be sharing out to your groups as well. In addition, in partnership with Voters of Tomorrow, there's a really special thing that the Grassroots Democrats HQ does. Number one, if you noticed, the staff members who you saw, the senior strategists, the people who used to be our field directors, and the staff that we have on now, they tend to be a lot younger than others of us that are on the board, and myself as the executive director. They do not have gray hair, because they are the young adults that are the true backbone of what the Grassroots Democrats HQ is. And what is really wonderful, Mana Shushtari is going to talk in a moment about the depth of the youth engagement program that we have, but every Tuesday, in addition to the youth focused programs that we're doing, we are offering a phone bank on Tuesday specifically for young Dems that are calling into what is called the youth vote. The youth vote are those people that in Wisconsin that are between the ages of 18 and 29 years old. And the truth is that when somebody makes a phone call to them that is not of an older generation, but they hear a younger voice, the likelihood of them voting is much higher. So I am really proud of the work that we're doing. And in both of these cases, the phone banks are being fed into not only by the work that we're doing with our partners, but the Wisconsin Democratic Party has also been looking to us, and they're feeding volunteers here. Actually, Robert, before we get off of this screen, can you please also let them know about the other, we have 2 more special phone banks where we have special guests coming. I'm putting you on the spot. Do you remember, can you speak to them? I'm going to turn it back to Mana, because Robert, Mana, can you actually help me out? What is the man's name who is coming on the 22nd of March?
Absolutely. So on the 22nd of March, we're going to be joined by podcast host Brian Tyler Cohen. I know you all see his tweets, and I know you all listen to his podcast. So make sure that you come to our phone bank on March 22nd at 3:30 Pacific time, 6:30 Eastern, to hear him kick off our phone bank and talk about the importance of why we are making phone calls into Wisconsin. I'm going to go ahead and drop that link into the chat. This is brand new. We just got him confirmed a couple days ago, so you will be among the first to sign up if you sign up tonight and make calls, so you too can be in a Zoom with Brian Tyler Cohen.
And then we don't yet have a date, but we do know that Representative Maxwell Frost, who is the youngest member of Congress, he's also going to be signing up with us to be doing kicking off a phone bank. And the during the entire GOTV weekend, Get Out the Vote weekend, we will be hosting phone banks on Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday. We do not have them fully scheduled yet, but I want to give a shout out to some of our amazing volunteers who actually run our phone banks with us. Pamela McAfee from North Carolina, Jessica Craven from Chopwood Carry Water. And we also have, Mana, help me out, Jane Fowle is also leading with us, in addition to Eliana and Sydney. So come into those Zooms. Robert, Mana, Davis, and I will be there as well. Mana, can you tell us a little bit more about what is happening with our youth programming and why that money that people are donating tonight, the 50% of it that is coming to the Grassroots Democrats HQ, where that is being fed into?
Absolutely. So before I start my pitch, everybody in this room who is part of the Organize for Democracy program, I want you to use the raise hand function and raise your hand so we can recognize you and applaud the incredible work that you have been doing over the past couple weeks. And we can applaud you for attending the trainings so you can learn the basics of becoming a field organizer. So everybody who has their hand raised, I want everybody else in the room to know that they are between the ages of 16 to 25 years old. And every week for the past couple of weeks, they've been logging on Thursday evenings or nights, depending on where in the country they are, to learn about the basics of field organizing. They have had the opportunity to learn phone banking 101. Last week we covered, what did we cover last week, you guys? Pop quiz. Somebody just shout it out. We covered something really important last week. I can't remember off the top of my head because I had a very long day. But every week they have been taking these skills that they have been learning in this Zoom room on this weekly training, and they have been putting it to work, volunteering 5 hours a week, making phone calls to fellow college students in Wisconsin to remind them that, hey, there is a super important election happening on April 4th. And the reason why this program is so important, and the reason why you're 50% of your donation tonight is going to go towards youth, is because we are paying these young people to be trained. They are being paid to be trained to learn how to become the next generation of field organizers. And I really want to point out the timing of this, because right now it's the beginning of 2023. And yes, this is just one election, but by learning the basics of field organizing now, we are preparing them to become the field organizers that will help us win the White House, win the Senate, and win the House in 2024. Because the Grassroots Democrats HQ's mission is to focus on year-round organizing. And that includes year-round training for young Dems. So yes, while we do have this program tonight, and in this cohort is focused on Wisconsin, we plan to take this strategy where right now we have 26 people in our program. We're going to do that 5 more times between now and November in 2024 to make sure that we are continuing to train the generation of organizers that will help us win in 2024. So your donation tonight, the 50% that is coming to the Grassroots Democrats HQ, will be going towards paying these young people to be trained on the importance of field organizing, and so that they can learn these skills, make calls so we can win in Wisconsin, and then win again multiple times between the different primaries and general election on November 2024. Tamara, kick it back to you.
Fantastic. So what I want to say as well, we have in-person volunteer opportunities at the Grassroots Democrats HQ as well. If you are a group leader here and you are already leading an in-person opportunity, thank you so much. These are some of the examples. The Grassroots Democrats HQ will actually give you every supply you need. We give you postcards, scripts, and addresses when you want to do that in person. You can be using our information libraries for doing phone banking. And similar to how we do phone banking on Zoom, many of you will be leading phone banks in person if you want. And we give you a resource guide on how to do that. So in-person events that we have are also on our Linktree, but I happen to know a lot of different groups that don't advertise them publicly, but are just using our materials to be doing in person. We want to see as many opportunities as possible for people to be getting involved. So thank you for those of you that are already leading the Pacific Palisades pop-up, Culver City pop-up, the North County pop-up, which is in North County, San Diego, and any other in-person opportunities that people want to do, including Palos Verdes and others. Thank you so much, Davis. Can you pop it to the next one? Fantastic. Do me one favor, take down the screen for 1 second, and then I'm going to have you bring it back. I just want to look at everybody in their faces. In addition to those young adults that you just saw people sharing out here about our Organizing for Democracy program. How many of you get postcards from us? Just raise your hand and say, I get an email for a postcard, right? Fantastic. Also in the room we have about 25 young adults from across the country that are not from a paid program, that are part of our fellows program. If you are a fellow of the Grassroots Democrats HQ, feel free to raise your hand, put in the chat, just be known that you are actually here. I want to let you know that they are giving us approximately 5 hours a week of volunteer work. They come to a training every week. They make sure that the actual lists and scripts are done. They make sure that the reminder phone calls are made. They make sure that the recruitment phone calls are made. If you got a recruitment call, a reminder text for tonight, they're the ones that are doing it. One of my favorite things about the Grassroots Democrats HQ is the full array of youth programming that we have. So thank you all for being here. I happen to see at the first screen that I have Tara, Bridget, Eliana, Sydney. I'm sure that there are more of you in the room that I'm not actually recognizing, but thank you. Davis, can you put that screen back up? So what I'm going to do now, it is the time for me to be the big ask. So we're going to pause. The big ask, first of all, is if you have not yet volunteered for something, we just told you about why it's so important to be making your phone calls, writing your postcards, and doing everything we're doing. I'm going to ask you to please go into the chat and make sure that you sign up for at least 2 shifts right now, and then keep on volunteering. But then take a deep breath. We do need the funding. Ben just finished explaining to us about all of the costs that they have there that relate to the extensive staff that they have in Wisconsin, making sure that they can be managing all of the door knocks that are actually taking place, as well as all the ads that have to take place. There's a huge structure, and I am so impressed in working with the coordinated campaign in Wisconsin. Grassroots Democrats HQ was brought into existence by the founders, Melissa, Brian, Ingrid, Davis, myself, and the rest of our board that is here, because we know that we need to be the extension of campaigns across the country, and we bring deep blue volunteerism into those campaigns. We make sure by managing phone banks, by doing postcards, and by making sure that that youth vote is met, that we are making up a difference that they can't do. So I am going to ask one more time, if you could please consider making a donation of $5, $25, $2,000 or more. Help us to get to our $4,000 goal tonight, which is representing that 4-3 majority. But moreover, just help us make sure, and don't worry, everybody who is in that Organizing for Democracy program, where you signed a contract. Out of 114 people, we brought on 26 of you. You will get your stipends. But I'm going to be honest with you all tonight. We took a leap. We didn't have the funds in the budget for it. I have a CFO sitting on the other side of the screen who's always coming back to me and saying, do we have the money? Do we have the money? Do we have the money? If you could make that donation tonight, I would greatly appreciate you. And with that, we're going to take down the screen. We're going to put it in the chat, and we're going to toast you again for being here. And as I do that, I'm going to turn it back to Melissa Grant, our board president, and toast her and Brian and Ingrid and all of you for being the incredible people that make the Grassroots Democrats HQ what it is today.
I don't know how I can expand on what Tamara just said, but I will say what I've always said at these events. You guys are the heart and soul of the Grassroots Democrats HQ. We wouldn't exist without you. You are the army that helps elect Democrats. And when we recite our statistics, those statistics are the work that each of you have done for us. And we hope you will continue doing with us, because when we do it, we win. When Democrats go out there and get the votes, Democrats win. And we've got to do that. Keep doing that. Get back the House, expand the Senate, hold on to the White House, flip various key legislatures and Supreme Courts. That's what we got to do right now. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And do give whatever you can. We could use the help. Believe me, we could use the help. So thank you for coming tonight. I hope you enjoyed it.